Welcome to Hot Takes Happy Hour. We're doing it on Wednesday because tomorrow yours truly is going to a submarine base in Groton, Connecticut. One of my colleagues he's a submarine commander, and he's giving me a tour of the submarine base there. So that's kind of exciting.
No, that's very exciting. I don't think
Danny's
that's
frozen.
on Cal.
I'm definitely not frozen because it's hot as hell here in New York.
No, can you see me? Oh no,
I
because
can
my
see you.
internet.
I can. Yeah.
Okay,
Your internet connection's kind of wonky, but
yeah, no,
as it is in beautiful Florence.
yeah.
Um, Hi everybody. Hi Danny.
Hi, Elise. What are we
Um,
talking about?
we're gonna start by talking about Ukraine.
Yay!
Yeah. Finally some
Finally,
good news for once that President Trump has said that he's going to unpause the pause on defensive weapons to Ukraine. Um, as we've read and heard, Pete Hegseth um, unilaterally took it upon himself to pause aid to Ukraine because he said that um, there were not enough. Was it because he didn't like Ukraine and he doesn't
no,
want to
no,
fund Ukraine?
it has nothing to do with that. No, So, to be fair, Pete Hegseth signed a memo that was written by the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. God, my hair looks funny. Sorry, everybody. I'm getting it done tomorrow. Next week, beautiful. Uh, but back to Pete Hegseth, that was signed by his Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Rich Colby, that made the argument that the United States was low on munitions, that basically we didn't have enough munitions, both after Iran and in other circumstances, in order to be able to give any to the Ukrainians. Really, that is actually technically a lie. It
That's
wasn't
what I
true
heard.
until
That's what I saw. That it wasn't that actually there was a study done, and actually they did have enough. But then all of a sudden there were these pieces coming out that we didn't have enough launchers. So do we or do we not? Or
we do.
interceptors?
We do have enough, and we just, per President Trump's orders, shared a pretty significant batch of PAC-3 Patriot missiles with the Ukrainians. A big part of what they need to be able to defend themselves is actually the sort of thing that we see the Israelis doing, which is having a missile defense, an air defense system that can withstand the barrage of drones and missiles that comes in from Russia. And the Russians are desperately trying to kill civilians now. That is the tip of their spear. It's not taking more territory. It's not getting yet another sliver of the part of Rhode Island that they've managed to capture at the cost of probably more than 100,000 Russian young men dead. It is now that they are just trying to kill Ukrainian civilians and bend their will. And so, you know what? We can't always say it on this show, but Donald Trump saw the light.
Well, and I think he also didn't know that there was a pause. Like, I mean, there is a question that he paying enough attention, but he said that he didn't know, and he said he wasn't notified. And as soon as he found out, he kind of, you know, reversed it.
He did. And look, this has now been a pattern, and you and I talked about this before the show. This has been a pattern with Pete Hegseth, that he has been, and the right word is the one that Mark and I used on our
Incompetent?
podcast. No, insubordinate. Insubordinate. It's not just that he is taking things upon himself. It is that he is doing this in direct contravention of what he is being told by the president. I don't know whether we've discussed it on this show, but in the first few weeks of the Trump administration, bunch of pretty hysterical calls came in from our command center in Europe that there was a pause, that the weapons weren't coming in, that there had been a stop order,
This was like
and
in February, right?
right, and you remember we talked about this, and Mike Waltz was then still the national security advisor, and Marco Rubio had not yet taken over the archives, and, and they had been in the same meeting with the president that Pete Hegseth had taken as an instruction that he should pause this, and they both were like, "What? What are you doing?" So, Pete's gotta go. I suspect he's gonna go. Of course, I
Well, I
was
mean,
wrong
but what
about
yeah,
Lloyd
that's the
Austin.
thing, like and what he says is like, "Oh, this is in line with President Trump's America First policy," so he thinks he could get away with it. But my question is, at what point is President Trump feel that this guy's a liability and cuts him loose? I mean, as I said before when we were speaking, I understand that he didn't wanna do it during Signalgate because, like, that would be, kind of, responding to the mob, media, or whatever. But,
Right.
like, every time there's a national security crisis of some sort or a scandal or Pete Hegseth is behind it. And let me say something, you know, he's not, and some of the things he's focused on are just not what the Pentagon should be focused on. Fine, the whole woke culture, whatever. But, like, procurement, technology, personnel, those are the things the Pentagon should be working at right now when there is some great power competition or China is a threat. And he's focused on all the wrong things. He's got to go.
So I'm not 100% in the same space on whether he's focused on all the wrong things. The problem for me with the Trump cabinet is that there's a line of people to the guillotine, and I'm not sure. Should Tulsi go first? My feeling is Tulsi should go first. Tulsi's number one on my list. Okay. This woman should never have gotten this job.
She should have never gotten the job, but in my opinion, she's irrelevant.
Yeah, well, maybe you may be right, and I
And
may be wrong
also,
there.
I've read that they, want to undo
He's cut out.
the DNA. Well, she's cut out. Um, that you know,
They're thinking about getting rid of the office of the DNI, which would be a gift to us all because that is a stupid office that
well,
should not
shouldn't there
exist.
be I think what I've said, and I think I said this to you, that there should be like a coordinator in the National Security Council that's doing like an intelligence directorate, maybe in the National Security Council that's coordinating all the agencies because there are a lot of agencies. I mean, there are a lot of intelligence agencies, and something needs to be. That was the whole thing about 9/11, right? That the agencies weren't talking to one another, which is why they created the DNI in the first place. So it does make sense that there should be some coordinator. Does it need to
Excuse
be a
me.
whole agency? Probably not.
No,
But
there
we
is
digress.
an intel component inside the NSC. I think the problem is that all the DNI did, in effect, was that it created an additional layer of bureaucracy inside the intelligence community. And you're right that you need a coordinator in some ways. And that job usually used to go to the DCI, the Director of Central Intelligence, who was the de facto big honcho here. And then the DNI got the job. And the reality is Donald Trump has effectively reversed that. He has Ratcliffe in meetings. He doesn't have Tulsi Gabbard. But the reality is he ought to go to Congress and say, we need to get rid of this BS that is the ODNI because it is a monster bureaucracy that is not advancing intel, in my humble opinion.
Back to Hegseth.
So, actually, can I ask you about Ukraine? So Mark and I were talking about this. So I was about to say before, Mark and I had Jack Keane, who, is a national treasure, on our podcast that we're releasing tomorrow morning. And one of the questions, oh my God, look at this. This is our neighbor's cat.
That's a cute
Everybody who
cat. I'm
knows
not
me
a cat
knows I'm
person,
not,
but that is a cute cat.
I'm not a cat person either, but it just
We're
jumped up
dog
on the chair
people.
next to me.
We're dog
I'm a
people.
dog person. Yes, German Shepherd dog people. But anyway, back to back to reality.
Back to the other
Um,
dog.
we talked about this question. What is the right aim for the United States to support for Ukraine for ending the war? The Ukrainians want everything back. They want Crimea. They want all the territory the Russians have taken. Realistically speaking, the Europeans aren't going to support them in getting back Crimea. Neither are we. It's been 11 years.
Well, and also
And
before Russia's invasion in 2022,
yeah,
nobody was talking about Crimea. Okay.
no, that's for sure. No, you're right
So,
about that.
you know
So
what I
what
mean?
so what should we do? So what should the war aims that we support be here? Should it be a ceasefire, defensible lines, or should it be the eviction of Russian forces
I think it should be
from
a ceasefire, defensible lines, preserve the territory that Ukraine has now. And it's a frozen conflict for a while until there's a better situation where maybe Putin's gone. There could be there's space for negotiations, but I think that's what people that are not necessarily Russian supporters but are more realists in, like Tom Graham, for instance, at the Council on Foreign Relations, who I think is pretty sensible and thoughtful. There can't be. What we're doing right now is we're making sure that Ukraine is not losing the war, but we're not helping them win the war. And so if we're not going to help them win
that
the
was the
war,
Biden policy, right?
what's that?
That was the Biden policy.
Well, it's the
And we don't
same
want them
it's
to
the same
win.
policy as it is right now, right? So it's a continuation. But I think that, basically ending the fighting, Russia withdraws to,
Defensible lines for
defensible
Ukraine.
lines. I would say, maybe like just inside the Donbass, maybe.
So, if that's the case, how does this not end up being like Minsk, like the frozen conflict in Georgia, like Nagorno-Karabakh, like everything else? How do we ensure that any
Like
ceasefire?
Korea, David Galinsky said, like Korea.
Korea is pretty stable.
Yeah.
I mean, not South Korea, obviously, but the border's pretty stable. If you saw, they just arrested their former president, so just an hour ago.
You know what
Um,
we have to talk about? If we maybe we should talk about it now, or we could talk about it next time, which
so
is what's going on with Xi. But anyway, let's just finish up on Ukraine.
Oh, that is a good conversation, though. So I do think this is a really tough one because I think it's going to be very hard on the Ukrainians that basically no one is going to support them in their goal to retake their unjustly
Yes,
captured territory.
Yeah, Sandra's asking, shouldn't Russia cede the Ukrainian land they seize? Yes,
Yes, but
and they're not going to.
right,
So instead of the war, dragging on for years because no one's going to really help Ukraine, expel the Russians, what we need to do is, get the fighting to stop.
yeah,
I mean,
you sound
look,
like Donald Trump. You do.
I don't
That's what he
that
says.
it was done in 24 hours. I don't think that Putin wants to give an inch, but he's certainly not going to just leave and give up all the land he got. If I think if you give him Crimea plus, and like, what about negotiating for the return of Ukrainian children? Yes, that's
Yes,
important.
for sure. That has to be part of it.
Yeah.
That's non-negotiable, and I think that should be non-negotiable. But, there are hundreds of thousands, right, of Russians who will never get their lives back from this ridiculous
But
war
I mean,
Putin
this war,
fought.
it can't be like another 20-year war. I mean, it needs, I think, and I
So,
think President
you
Trump
think
is,
Americans are weary of Ukrainians dying in the war?
I'm an American and I'm weary of it. But
I admire them.
I will say, I think President Trump is, getting tired. I think and we've talked about this before.
Sick of Putin's bullshit. That's what he said. I couldn't believe he said it. Listen,
I think he's finally realizing that, President Putin is treating him like a chump. He doesn't want to be seen as a chump. And, you know,
good. That's a good thing. That's all to the good. What else are we supposed to talk about today?
Jay Johnson, it could be a 20-year war if Putin concedes anything. I think you just got to give him a face-saving exit. I think I don't know that he'll take it, but I think I think what we're saying is we should do that. Yes, he gets tired at the drop of a pen, but he doesn't like to be made a fool of, and Putin's making a fool of him. So I think he's getting tired of that. Um, you didn't know a lot about this alligator Alcatraz because you were working on a bunch of other stuff, but I sent you some articles at it, and I think it's outrageous. And you don't care?
No.
What?
Sorry. You
I
know
mean,
what? I've got I've got a cup and it's full of, Gaza and Hamas and the United Nations and UNRWA and Lebanon and Syria and Russia and Ukraine and China and Taiwan and Europe and yeah, a bunch of illegal aliens in prison in Florida. Just
it's not just in prison,
don't make my
Danny.
cup run us over.
It's not just in prison, Danny. It's the idea that like the US is like, it's not even about like how we treat immigrants. It's like that it's about, foreign policy by spectacle, putting them in a prison where they can, and joking that they're going to get eaten by alligators. Like
So,
what?
I'll be with you on one point.
They're
Um, uh,
selling merch? It's fucking disgusting.
well, we sold merch at Guantanamo Bay too. I have
That's
a whole bunch
disgusting
of it.
too.
I don't. I'm happy that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is providing some source of income to somebody. And Michael, you possibly should not be on this cast with us because I'm the other half of Lisa's show. That's who this Danielle is. But listen, at the end of the
Obviously
day,
not a
look.
regular viewer. Where have you
Who is
been,
that
Michael?
bitch? Why is nobody asking who is Elise? So listen, merch, the whole 9 yards, that's gross. That I can't stand. I can't stand the idea that this is a joke, that making fun of people is part of their strategy. That is unacceptable. As far as putting people in prison who shouldn't be in the country in the first place, yeah, I'm a little less concerned about that. Sorry, I'm not the humanitarian that you
Okay,
are.
but listen, Americans want border security. And I think
Thank you, Michael. I'm growing my audience.
I think what many people believe President Trump said they were going to focus on violent criminals, not just the fact that they were there illegally. And, friends, neighbors, some of these people are in the community. Fine. You can argue about that. But, when a sitting president is joking about migrants being eaten by alligators, when federal agencies are making these promotional videos celebrating their suffering, we've crossed the line.
Yes, we agree about that. We shouldn't be
Okay.
doing that.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Yes. Next. We agree about that.
Yeah, let's talk about Chi. What's going on with him?
So this is a really interesting question. I mean, look, there's an enormous amount of Kremlinology that goes on around the Chinese Communist Party, but um,
I will
there
just say
certainly
before
been,
you go on,
yeah.
Sandra, Danny does care about human rights issues. They're just selective.
No, they're not.
She's
I care
she's
about people who live in tyrannies. I don't care about people who violate U.S. law in order
okay.
to abuse our rights and privileges. Sorry. So no. I'm not selective about human rights at all. Um, Look, Xi Jinping, this is a very interesting question, and I guess this is the moment when the spotlight comes around to him once again. He has closed the ranks around him to a very small group of people. He has fired an enormous number of very senior people around him. There are suggestions that he's afraid to leave China, that isn't willing to go to Brazil because he doesn't want to be seen on a camera that he can't control. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, there are rumors, because he's been absent from some key meetings. There are rumors that he's afraid to leave the country. There are, it looks like he may not attend the EU China summit. And
That would limit the EU China summit.
well, I mean, there's a lot of rumors that he's losing control of the military. So, and again, as you said, all of the people of these purges of the military, because maybe it's because he's paranoid, but there are a lot of rumors that he's losing control. So I think watch this
I
space. I don't know if it's true. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that people are I
Um,
think what's happening is people are connecting a lot of dots. Um, whether it's, being sidelined, there does seem to be some, instability going in there, and maybe that his grip over the CCP, may not be as strong as it was. His absence from all of these international events, the recent BRIC summit, that was kind
yeah,
of
no, I know,
interesting.
that's what I was talking about. But, again, look, somebody said to me, "Oh, we were talking about this a few weeks ago. Is Iran about to fall after the Israeli strikes and the American strikes?" And I said, "No, I don't think so. On the other hand, I don't think I've ever correctly predicted the overthrow of a government,
Me
ever."
neither.
Right, exactly. I mean, would
It
either
happens
of
when it
us
happens, right?
it happens when it happens, and again, I think the Chinese Communist Party is very solid in its perch. I suspect that Xi Jinping is more solid in his perch than many of us want to admit, and that there's a lot of hope that's infusing this. The Chinese Communist Party is not just, as much as he would like to suggest that it is, it's not just Xi Jinping. And so, again, could something happen? Of course, it could happen, but this is a country of 1.4 billion people, and this is a police state to rival any police state that has ever existed in the history of mankind. I mean, people used to call Saddam Hussein's country a republic of fear. This is a place where fear reigns. You cannot. And so, you know, I'd be very shocked if 1 plus 1 equaled 2 here. I think it's more likely to remain at 3. Hey, you want to talk for one last second before we sign off about the BB visit?
Yeah. What was your take?
So, I mean, if we set aside the atmospherics, which are
And
always,
the Nobel
hey, you know
nomination.
what? If only everybody was as transparent as Donald Trump. For example, I noticed that you did not come on and say, "Danny, you look outstanding today," which would immediately make me love you even more.
Danny, you do look
BB,
outstanding today.
I know I do, and so do you, by the way. Your hair looks great, but Bibi Netanyahu understands Donald Trump, and, all I can say is, I guess good for him because that matters to the state of Israel. I think we're getting there on Gaza. I think both Hamas and, notwithstanding the views of some of our watchers, that the Israelis are also ready for this to end. I think there are diminishing returns. They're taking a lot of casualties. Yes, they're definitely making gains and holding more territory, but it's like the dog that chased the car. Oh, you caught Gaza. good luck.
Now what?
So I think exactly. So I think there's a pathway forward. I talked to my former assistant who is a journalist with the Times of Israel, and he said he's much less optimistic about the Saudi stuff, the Syria stuff. And to me, I think that makes sense. I think Syria is a real, red herring. I don't think Ashara is going to fall in with Bibi. What do you think?
I think they're gonna do it with Syria. I don't think
Serious?
yeah.
Really?
I don't think
Really?
Shara apparently, yeah, apparently Tom Barrack, who's working that file, close, ally of
Our
President
ambassador
Trump,
was, yeah.
who's now the, ambassador to Turkey, but is also working, Syria and
Yeah.
Lebanon. Apparently, he's coming to the UN this week. They're gonna be lifting, sanctions on al-Nusra or the taking al-Nusra off the terrorism list, taking
They
Shara off
did
the
that already.
terrorism
Yeah.
list. And, I think they're gonna do it.
Well, all I can say is I hope Hafez al-Assad is rolling in his grave. I picture to myself his stupid, disgusting, murderous son sitting in some condo in Moscow
In
with his
Moscow.
hate-filled wife, right? Sitting next to him thinking, how can I how can I get away from this bastard? And if they make peace with Israel, that would be I mean, I'm still doubtful, but then again, as I said,
Well, I think that he's the new leader of Syria. I just don't think he's burdened with this kind of history of Israel and Syria.
he was in Al-Qaeda, for God's
I know,
sakes. He
but
may
don't
not be
forget.
burdened with
Okay, but
that.
you know what? For all of the stuff about Al Qaeda and Israel, Al Qaeda never went after it. Do you know what I mean? I just
Yeah, I
think
would our listeners are gonna be like, "What's wrong with Elise?" But you're actually right, it's really interesting. The most Salafi Sunni group never, ever had Israel as its number 1. It was always, like, number 4, number 5 on Osama bin Laden's
it was
list,
the
but
US
it was well, and Saudi
and
Arabia.
Arab regimes, right?
Yes, exactly, exactly. So look, at least I hope you're right. I think it's incredible. David asked a question, so let's end with that. David, the answer is that neither Jordan nor Egypt, both of which have made peace with Israel, are dedicated to the eradication of the Israeli state. Uh, but they both have Egypt a very cold peace with Israel, and Jordan an increasingly cold peace with Israel, largely because of the weakness of the tiny little king. And Sandra, I didn't see your
I don't
question.
think
I
that's the
apologize.
only reason. I think it's, look, Israel and Jordan have had, a lot of issues over the last several years. Gaza is not the only one, but I do think that, Egypt and Jordan and look, we've talked about
Egypt
this.
and Jordan don't give a shit about the Palestinians, Elise.
They
Give
don't
me
care.
a break.
They may not care about the Palestinians themselves, but their populations do, and that's why they make a show that they care. So
We have to have a whole, yes. Well, it's
we
certainly a
need to have a whole
pretense.
issue on that one.
We need to have a whole discussion. We need to start with that
So,
and then turn to Xi Jinping as opposed to anything else. Hey, yes, sorry,
Sandra,
that's not good.
we hope that there'll be a ceasefire. I mean, I think at this point there's a law of diminishing returns on the Gaza war. I really do think that you're not going to be able to destroy Hamas by continuing this war. I think
Thank
if
you,
they're
Michael.
Danielle, I do agree with you. I
I'm gonna
think that
screenshot that baby.
the only way I think you can destroy Hamas, but it's not gonna be, by continuing this war. I think it's
Well,
you
you
need
can't, well, you know what? It's what my former boss used to say. You can't beat something with nothing. There's gotta be a
yeah,
Palestinian
yeah,
leadership. There's gotta be
and there's
something
gotta be
there, and
horizon
this is the
to
great
something.
barrier.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, we're in
exactly. Hey,
agreement.
good to see you looking so great. We'll be back at our same, what did I say on on the
Same
notes
bat
thing? Same
same
back
bat
channel.
channel, same old bats.
There you go, next week, Thursday again,
Okay.
hopefully.
See
Anyway,
everybody.
take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye, Elise.
Bye.